Good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am Dr. Mrudu Makwana from Department of Pharmacology, SMIMER, Surat. On behalf of Indian Pharmacologists United Network, I extend my heartfelt welcome to all our participants for today's national webinar on how to write a thesis and manuscript. Now, as we all know, scientific writing is an indispensable skill for every medical professional. Whether you are an undergraduate student or a postgraduate resident, knowing how to write a well-structured thesis and publish a quality manuscript is essential for academic and professional growth. Today's webinar has been specially organized to provide practical guidance and simplify this important process. It is our privilege to welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Prakash B. Patel, Sir, MBBS and MD in Community Medicine. He is a professor at the Department of Community Medicine, Surat, SMIMER. Sir is an accomplished researcher with extensive experience in multicentric research projects, scientific publication, and mentoring researchers in academic writing. We are truly honored to have him with us today. I am confident that this session will be highly informative and beneficial for all of us. Without further delay, I request Dr. Prakash B. Patel, sir, to kindly take over this session. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
These are two different skill, and as a postgraduate student or as a faculty or as a researcher in future, we should develop both the skills, doing a good research and then converting this research and communicating this research to the reviewer or to the journal. That is important. So in this next hour, we will talk about the anatomy of manuscript. What are the different component of manuscript and what are the important points? That is the most important part of this session. Then what is weak writing and strong writing, how to write a strong word rather than just weak and just descriptive things. Then what are the common pitfalls when you submit a manuscript? The common pitfalls that we as a reviewer or an editor look into this. And then what are the other resources which are available which can help you to convert or make your manuscript strong. So if we first let's go to the anatomy of manuscript. So the manuscript, we call it as IMRAD skeleton, IMRAD format. It is commonly called. Most of the journals follow this format. It starts with the introduction, followed by methodology, result, and discussion. If you look at this section, every section has a specific objective, or the specific things should be there in this each section. Let's say introduction. Introduction should tell that why did you ask this question? Why did you ask the research question? So introduction should justify why you are doing this research. Okay, so that is the part of introduction. Method sections is answer what you have done, what exactly you have done. That is there in the methodology. And result section tell us what you find out. What did you find? That should be there in the result. And discussion tell us what is the meaning of this result. Whatever you have find, what is the meaning of that result. So this is a common format. The important things need to remember here is that each section has their own job. So don't overlap the section. Don't start writing discussion in introduction section. Don't write result in the methodology section. Don't start discussion in the result section. So each section has their own role, and you have to limit your writing within that section, particular section. Good. So let's move in the next slide. So before IMRD or the main manuscript, we have a title and abstract. So what I think these are the two most read and least respected parts of the manuscript. Everybody focus on the main manuscript, but they least focus on title and abstract. While if you see the most read part of the manuscript is title and abstract. Everybody going to look at the title and abstract, and this give you first impression about your research. If your title and abstract are not good enough, it will create it may not create a good impression about your research. So you should write a good title and a good abstract. if you look at the title should contain the design of the research, like whether it is a cross-sectional design, phase control, cohort, RCT. It should also include the population or the setting where the study conducted, or in which population the study is conducted. It should also include the key exposure or key interventions, or uh, key variables that we have taken into the study. And uh, and the primary outcome, if it fits, into the title, then you can include that also. So let's say there is an example, a study on sarcopenia in elderly diabetic patient. This is a study on sarcopenia in elderly diabetic patient. This title is something somewhat like a vague. Let's say if we reframe it like that, prevalence and predictor of sarcopenia among elderly patient with type 2 diabetes, a cross-sectional study in Western India. So this title is a very specific title. It's a strong title. It has a design. I already mentioned cross-sectional study. It also mentioned population. It is elderly patient with type 2 diabetes. And what key exposure, what we are going to study, that we are going to study prevalence as well as the predictors of the sarcopenia. So this outcome is not there, but all three important components are there. So this is how we reframe the title. And certain word we should have, like, let's say it start with a study. Most of the title people start with a study on something. But why are you wasting your word? A study on is just a wastage of word. So many journal has a limitation of words. So don't waste word like a study on. It is obviously a study. When we submit a original research article, it is a study. No need to mention that. Okay. So don't waste your word. If we go to when we go to the abstract is like mini IMRAD. What I said, IMRAD is a structure of the skeletal of the manuscript. It is something like a mini IMRAD. So usually journal allow 250 words in a abstract writing. So always make the structure abstract. Like it should have a background, methodology, result, and conclusion. So 1 to 2 word of the background on the knowledge gap about the whatever topic we are going to study. Then give more space for method, design, setting, sample size, key variable, and then result. Okay. Try to write down not only the p-value, but also try to write down the effect size, that is odds ratio or relative risk or adjusted odds ratio, confidence interval. Try to include that in the result section. And then finally, only one single sentence conclusion. So this is structure of abstract. It's like it will briefly tell the entire your study. So many a time reader or researchers, reviewer look into the abstract and then decide whether we read or review the manuscript further or not. So uh, uh, and one more thing, I have seen many people who start writing abstract first and then write the manuscript. Don't do that. First write the entire manuscript thoroughly, and then write the abstract. It is a snapshot of what you have written in your manuscript, the full manuscript. So a good exercise for yourself is, after you finish your full draft, write the abstract last. See if you can defend every sentence, and then see if you can defend every sentence with whatever you have written in your abstract by using only what is inside the manuscript. So the abstract should represent the manuscript only. Don't write something which is not there in the manuscript. So abstract should be purely based on the manuscript, and it should like a snapshot of what research you have done. Moving to the next session, that is introduction session. Introduction session basically have a 3 paragraph, okay, or you can say 3 section. the first section or first paragraph is broad context, or what is known and why the topic matter clinically. What is known about the topic which we are going to study. Let's say in previous example, it is about sarcopenia in type 2 diabetes, okay, in elder. So what is known about sarcopenia in diabetic patient? That should be our broad context. Or you can also say it is like a problem statement. What is the problem? What is the how serious sarcopenia, how important sarcopenia is for a diabetic patient? That should be there in a paragraph 1. The paragraph 2 tells the gap or the knowledge gap. Okay, ultimate objective of our research is to fill up the knowledge gap. Something we don't know, and by this research we want to tell you, we want to tell the people about what is we don't know earlier. So here we will write the knowledge gap, what is not known, or if there are any conflicting evidence. One research is saying this and one research, like let's say one research is saying that X drug is good and another research says that X drug is not good. So this is conflicting evidence. So that you write down conflicting evidence, or something which is unaddressed in population. Some population is a segregated population is there, where something is not known about this population. Let's say sickle cell issue is there in tribal population, but it is not, we don't know about the severity or the prevalence of sickle cell disease. So this gap is there, this knowledge gap is there. So you clearly tell what is the knowledge gap which we are going to fill up. So paragraph 2 is about, it is important, most important paragraph which justify your research. If the reviewer or editor is not convinced about this paragraph, they might like not select your manuscript for peer review. So this is important paragraph. And third paragraph is about the objectives. Third paragraph or last paragraph is about the objective. This the above two paragraph, the broad context and knowledge gap, the objective should be based on this above two paragraph. So it should be a clear, testable objective. The objective should be very clear what you exactly you want to achieve. Would it be read like it should not like vague sentence, like I want to study relationship within these things and this thing. It should not like that. Like I want to study relationship between diabetic and sarcopenia. It should not like that. It should be a very specific. It you need to specify in which population what you are doing. Relationship is a vague term. What exactly you want to find out? Association, you want to find out correlation. So you need to be a little bit specific, or not little bit, very specific in your objective, and don't put ambiguous term in the objective, because if your objective are not clear, it create a dilemma in reviewers or editors mind, that exactly what this researcher is trying to achieve. So your objective should be clear in that sense. And see, objectives are most important part of the research. Like whatever you have written from starting from title to the conclusion, everything is linked to your objective. Whole entire methodology, the objective of methodology is we want to achieve or fulfill the objective. So entire methodology depend on the objective, what you want to do. If you want to find out incidence rate, the entire methodology is in support of that objective. If you want to find out prevalence rate, if you want to assess the effectiveness of X drug, then the entire methodology will be based on that. So objective should be very precise. You can divide objective into primary and secondary objective, but not necessary every time. But if you have primary and secondary objective, you can put it like that. Our primary objective is this and secondary objectives are there. But many a time it is not clearly mentioned primary and secondary. They just mention the objective. But whatever objective you mention, it should be clear. Then the next is methodology. again, this is the most important part which reviewer or editor scrutinize. It is the hardest scrutinized part, that they look each and every sentence, whatever you have written in methodology. Okay, if you look at broadly, the methodology should include design, study duration, setting, eligibility criteria, sample size, variable definitions of variable. Later on, we will see. Then statistic used and ethical consideration. All these things should be there uh, in the methodology. Okay, many times people ask, how much detail should I include in methodology? The simple answer is that uh, if somebody is reading your research, somebody is reading your methodology, and it should be in such a detail that that person should be able to do your research in his or her setup without taking without asking further question. If he has to guess something, if he has to ask you something again, then there are some deficiency in your methodology. So it should be in such a way that somebody else is reading your methodology should be able to do that type of research in their own environment. Okay, there are like still what should be included. There are very clear cut guidelines. If you have heard about Equator Network, you could just go to this site, equatornetwork.org. This website provide a lot of checklists for study. Let's say there is a strong checklist for observational study, and there are section of version of strong checklist for cohort study, cross section study. This checklist provide what minimum things you should include when you write a methodology, even methodology and observation and discussion. So these guidelines are very helpful. Many journals, many reviewers, many editors use this guideline to assess the completeness of the manuscript. So this guideline is very helpful when you start preparing your manuscript. Even I say, even when you prepare your proposal before doing a research, you should read these guidelines, so it will help you to even design your protocol in a better way. Not only the manuscript, but it's also help you to design your protocol. So you should definitely go this guideline when you write your proposal or even manuscript. If you go into detail about different section in methodology, so it start with the study design. You should start with your study design. You should clearly mention what type of study, exit study design is, whether it's a cross-sectional study, prospective study, case control study, because based on that, you have to write down data collection methods and whether follow-ups are there. Or let's say if it's cross-sectional study, there is no need for follow-up. But if you have written it's a prospective cohort study or prospective study, then you must describe what are the follow-up and what are the variable you are going to collect in the follow-up. If it is a case control study, then there must be a definition of cases and control and matching and everything. So you clearly mention the study type. You clearly mention the data collection method, whether it is a prospective data collection, whether it is a retrospective data collection, or whether it is a cross-sectional data collection. Okay. Then clearly mention the starting, when the data collection started and when the data collection ended. So dates are important. You should mention that. Then whether it is a single center study or multi-centric study, retrospective, prospective, even you should, like, let's say when we are mentioning, let's say we have done in a government medical college in Ahmedabad. So you should mention what are the catchment area of that hospital, because the results are applicable to that population. So when you do a study in a hospital, always mention the catchment area. In community-based study, we mention the area. But when we do a study in hospital, always try to mention the catchment area from where the patients come from. Then setting where the study is conducted, whether it is in OPD, community-based, ICU, whether it is conducted in ICU patients. Also mention the geography and institutional context of the and any, like as I have mentioned, the catchment area of the population. The next point is eligibility criteria. This is also very important part of methodology. Which patients are included and which patients are excluded. You need to very explicitly mention the inclusion criteria. What is the age range? Let's say what is the age range, how you have diagnosed, what are, like, so we have included only type 2 diabetic patients. We have included a patient more than 50 years of age, elderly patients. Okay. So all these things you need to mention in inclusion criteria, and then mention the exclusion criteria. If somebody is fulfilling the inclusion criteria, then what are the points based on which we exclude the patients? Okay, let's say we have taken type 2 diabetic patient, but uh, if the patient is suffering from, let's say, kidney disease, then we excluded them. So you need to mention if a patient is suffering from kidney disease, or uh, let's say CKD, then we have excluded. So clearly mention the exclusion criteria. Don't write something like those who are not fulfilling inclusion criteria will be excluded. Those who are not giving consent are excluded. Okay, but clearly mentions, in detail mentions what, why the patient is excluded. And the next is how the patient is identified, how the eligible patients are identified. Let's say the patient are coming from the OPD or OPD registered patient are identified, whether it is from referral, whether walking patients are only walking patients are taken, or whether house to house survey is done and based on that patients are selected. So how we identified the eligible patient, that we need to clearly mention or spell out into the methodology section. Then the next is sample size and sampling method. Okay. Sample size is also an important part, very important part, which you need, which many a time reviewer clearly look into detail. Okay. Don't just mention that sample size of 150 is taken. That is not even how you reach to this 150 number. That is important to write. Okay, there are different software which are available online or even free of cost available, which you can use, like OpenAI, GPower, Endmaster. All these software are there. Even statistical formula is also known to everyone. That simple statistical formula you can use. Let's say if it is a prevalence study, then you can just simply use Z square PQ upon D square. That formula, this formula is very standard formula. Actually, no need to mention formula into the method, okay, in a sample size, but you have to mention what are the assumption you have taken. Let's say you are whether you have taken confidence interval on 95%, then Z automatically become 1.96. Okay, what margin of error you have taken, what confidence interval you have taken, what power of study you have taken, that you have to mention when you mention the sample size. So uh, like it depend upon the and the sample size formula is not same for every study type. It depend upon the type of study. If it is a prevalence state study, then the sample size is different. If it is a comparative study, then the sample size calculation is different. Okay. So that you need to mention. You can take help of the statistician from your institute and write down the sample size. And then next is what actual sample you have taken. One is a calculated sample size, and then come what actual sample you have taken. Okay, whatever sample size we calculate, that is a minimum sample size. So you have to always take number of sample higher than the calculated sample size. If you are anticipating any non-response, if it is a follow-up study and you are anticipating attrition or loss to follow-up, then adjust sample size accordingly. Let's say we are doing a follow-up study and we based on our clinical experience, we thought that the almost 10 to 20% patient doesn't come for the follow-up. Then you include 20% additional sample in your study. So finally you end up with the sample size which is above the calculated sample size. Okay, but this minimum sample, the actual number should be reasonably above. It is not like that you have calculated sample size of 150 and you are taking sample of 400. It should be reasonably above. Let's say you are taking 175 or 180, that is okay. So you have to take a reasonably higher number of sample than what we have actually calculated. Then come the sampling method. How we have taken this sample, or how we have recruited the patients or recruited the subject. Sample size calculation is one thing, and how we recruit the patient is another thing. Let's say we have taken consecutive sample, we have taken convenient sample, or we have simply taken random sample. Let's say I have a, let's say I want to do a community based study, and I have a list of people with me. So I just randomly pick whatever number I want. Let's say I 100 patients. So I will randomly pick 100 patients and then contact them. Whether it is stratified sampling, whether it is systematic sampling, whether it is convenient sampling, whatever method you have taken, you have to write down here. Okay. If it is a random sample, stratified sampling, systematic sampling, then it is good things. It is okay. But when you are taking purposive sampling or convenient sampling, then it is important to justify this thing. Because okay, random is good, okay, because our whatever sample size we calculate, that is for random sampling. But if we are adopting something else, let's say convenient or purposive sampling, many a time it is not possible to do random sampling, so we go for convenient or purposive sampling. So in that case, you need to justify, and you need to also need to mention in a limitation later on. Later on, we will see limitation section, but in that section, you need to mention that this is a convenient sampling, which is one of the limitation. Better if we have a random sampling. State the sampling frame from where you have drawn the sample. Let's say I have a list of population, so that become my sampling frame, and from that I have drawn the sample. I have a list of IPD patient, and from there I have selected. So that become my sampling frame. Now, based on the type of study, certain things you need to mention in detail. If it is a case control study, then you need to mention matching, what matching you have done while selecting the control. Similarly, if it is a clinical trial, then you need to mention about randomization, allocate and concealment, or let's say blinding, what blinding you have done during your sampling. So these things needs to be included in sampling method. Then come the next part of the methodology is variable or measurement. Okay, this is like, in my experience, this is the single most underwritten part of the many methodology section, that is variable and measurement. Simply mentioning that this variable is included, it is not enough. Let's say in previous sarcopenia example, if I just mentioned that sarcopenia was assessed in type 2 diabetic patient, that is not enough. I need to mention the operational definition which I have used in the study. Let's say the AWGS, that is Asian Working Group Study 2009 criteria is there, which is used in one of the study which we have reviewed. Okay, so here the author need to mention the sarcopenia was defined as per AWGS 2019 criteria as low hand grip strength, different in male and female, plus low appendicular skeletal mass, different in male and female, and measured using the bioelectrical impedance analysis in body 270 instrument. Okay, so this much clear you need to mention in your study. Okay, whatever criteria you have used, you need to clearly mention, and you need to clearly mention with the reference. Don't invent definition by yourself. Okay, you need to mention based on the previous study or based on the standard guidelines which we have. Okay, so our study is not to invent definition. So our study is not that. So we use the whatever available guideline, whatever definitions we have. Like let's say we are taking hypertension, so we have a definition of hypertension. So we will use that definition to define hypertension. Okay, so apart from this clear-cut operational definition, there are certain things you need to also mention. That is, classify each variable whether it is an independent variable, whether it is a dependent variable, or whether it is a confounding or covariate. Mention whenever we write down the variables that our dependent variable is sarcopenia, our independent variable are this X, Y, Z. Our confounding variables are age and socioeconomic classification or certain clinical condition like that. Then mention the source of definition. Whatever tool, whatever definition we have used, we need to mention the source. Like I have used the definition of hypertension, then I need to mention from where I got this definition. Similarly, many tools we are used. So whatever tool you use, it should be validated tool. And then mention cite the reference where this definition is available. Let's say I am such psychiatric scale, like many times we use a certain depression scale to assess depression. So I need to mention the source where this tool is validated. There are studies which published study which validate, these are called validation studies. So we need to cite the original source of validation of this tool. State the instrument and its validity. Whatever instrument we have used, we need to mention that source or the detail about that instrument and its validation. Many times we use instrument in like let's say biochemical analysis. So we need to mention that instrument in detail. So if we tool we have used, then we need to mention the language or whether the tool is culturally adapted or not. Some tool is developed in Western countries, let's say in USA, but when you are using in an Indian context, then you need to translate into your local language. And then the second thing is you need to culturally adapt that questionnaire. So minor cultural adaptation you need to do. So you need to mention all this. If you have translated the questionnaire, then you need to mention how the translation is validated. Okay, there are methods which you have to mention. And then the collection process, how exactly the data are collected, whether it is interview based, whether blood sample is taken and it was analyzed, okay, whether it is on record based. Let's say I am looking for a vaccination history, so I can ask the patients and take the history, or I can just look into the patient's file and find out whether vaccine was taken or not. So you need to mention this data collection process also. Then the next part of methodology is statistical analysis. So I have seen many patients just vaguely write that we have applied chi-square test, t-test, and logistic regression, or we have applied an appropriate statistical test for the analysis. That is not enough. You need to clearly mention for which variable which test was used. Let's say if you are describing the patient characteristics, then based on the data, if it is a standard distributed data, then you use mean and standard deviation. If it is a skewed data, then you use median and IQR. If it is a proportion, then you use frequency. Okay. Which test is used for which variable? Let's say we compare the sarcopenia prevalence by sex in male and female, then chi-square test is used. If it is less than 5 samples, then Fisher exit is used. So you need to clearly mention for which variable which test is used. Okay, if you have applied regression analysis, multivariate analysis, then clearly mention what type of multivariate analysis you have used, which are the variable included for adjustment in multivariate analysis, what are the criteria to select the variable in multivariate analysis. Let's say many times if you find any significant criteria variable, then only you take into the multivariate analysis. So you have to mention it. Many times based on the clinical experience, we consider a variable for confounding and included into the adjustment. So whatever you have done, you need to clearly mention. These are the method we have adopted. You also need to mention what statistical threshold you have kept for identify statistical significance, whether it is less than 0.05, or less than 0.01. So that you need to mention. And last thing, you also need to mention the software and version of the software which you are using to analyze the data. Okay, you also need to mention whether you have decided to do sensitivity analysis or subgroup analysis or not. So this detail clearly communicate that you have thoroughly understood the statistical aspect of the methodology, and then you have written it. Don't just write down vague things. I have seen many manuscripts where it is written the appropriate statistical test were applied. Now, what is the appropriateness? That you need to clearly mention that this tests are applied for this type of variable. Then the next come is ethical consideration and registration. This is also an important point which you need to communicate. And many a time, this, like, let's say ethical approval, it is very important to mention from where you have obtained ethical approval, what is the approval number or approval letter number, and what is the date of approval. Okay, the reviewer will when you mention the date of approval, reviewer will immediately see what is the starting date of data collection, whether the approval is obtained before the start of data collection or not. And it is very important that you do take approval first and then start the data collection. Most of the journals nowadays ask for the IC approval letter. That you need to submit IC approval letter to the journal. So don't forget to mention about ethical approval, then the consent, how the consent was triggered, whether it is a written consent, whether it is a verbal consent, uh, whether it is a written consent, whether it is a verbal consent, and how the assent was handled for minor and incapacitated adult. So, and when you are obtaining verbal consent, only verbal consent is not enough. You need to do some recording, or audio or visual recording is must when you mention about the verbal consent. So whatever way you have taken consent, you need to mention in the methodology. Then comes the confidentiality, how the data were handled, how the samples are anonymized, or how the data are anonymized from the patients, how the data storage was done, and what are the restrictions that you applied to keep the data confidential. That all the things you need to mention. Then the next thing is trial or protocol registration. See, there are certain type of study you need to register before you start the study. Let's say when in India, when we do any clinical trial, we need to register to CTRI. CTRI's website, you can go to that site. All type of study you can register, but it is important every journal ask for CTRI registration if you have done a clinical trial. So, and it is prospective registration. You need to go and register first, and then you have to start the trial. So do that before you start any trial, and you need to mention this in your manuscript. And when you mention, every reviewer will ask this, and they will also verify, cross check whether it is actually registered or not. And then, like, let's say if you are doing a systematic review, then there is a Prospero registration. You need to go to the site and register, and it is also before the start of the study. So this should be this registration detail should be there in the methodology. Okay, so what, as I have already said, the methodology should be in such a detail that somebody who is reading the methodology should able to conduct the study, similar type of study in their own setup. That's much detail should be there in the methodology, and this is the most hardest scrutinized part by the reviewer or editor. Okay, so after completing the methodology, we will go to the result section. Uh, Result section is also important, which communicate what you have find out. Okay, so results section is what you have find out in your study. Okay, the important point to remember in the result section that there are certain do's and don'ts in a result section. Simply, you need to follow the objective. Whatever sequence of objective you have mentioned, you need to present result in that way. Okay. And when you write down the result, it also should link to the tables. So when you write down the prevalence of sarcopenia is this in type 2 diabetic patient, and then mention table number where the detail is there. Okay. The next important thing is try to mention the effect size or odds ratio. Instead of only mentioning p-value, try to mention the effect size as well as confidence interval. Don't just mention the p-value. Okay. And one more important thing many people missing is that reporting non-significant. Many people avoid mentioning the result which are not significant. They just mention only significant. It is not a good way to represent result. You need to mention both the significant as well as non-significant result. What you don't do is don't interpret the finding. It is there in the discussion section. Don't interpret it in a result section. Don't cite the other study. It is for discussion section. Don't retype everything which is there in the table. Okay, results table and like if something is told in table, no need to write everything in a words in paragraph. Okay, report means without denominator and totals. Okay, don't write something without denominators. Like let's say I am writing the mean age of the patient is 62 years. Okay, but you need to mention in which numbers, whether it is a 40 patient, whether it is a 400 patient. So that is important, because without denominator, the it is useless to mention the number. So always write down result in detail. Okay. If we go to the expected sequence, how we represent result. So there are basic five headings how we represent the result, okay, or how a reviewer is expect. First is a patient flow, participants flow. Said before presenting any table or actual result, you need to mention, let's say you have in your methodology, you have mentioned how we are going to recruit the patient, what is the eligibility. Now mention how many patients are screened, how many patients are excluded, and what are the reasons for their exclusion, and how many patients are enrolled, and finally how many patients are analyzed. This is most important part. This is important part which most of the manuscript missed. So this participant flow, how many are screened, how many are included, how many are excluded, how many are enrolled, and how many are finally analyzed, that you need to mention. This final analyzed number should be above the minimum calculated sample size. Then next part is baseline characteristic, where you present the demographic and clinical profile of the patient which we are included in the analysis. Then next is primary outcome. The result tied directly to your stated main objective. So whatever our main objective or outcome, primary outcome, we will mention after baseline characteristic, and then mention the secondary characteristic, like whatever correlation we want to find out, or what are our objective. Based on that, we will mention this secondary outcome. Then the last part, our primary and secondary objectives are over. Then we will go for subgroup or sensitivity analysis. If it is planned, if you have decided to do subgroup analysis before the you have mentioned in the methodology, then we will mention at the last subgroup analysis or sensitivity result. Then table and figures. What should be there in tables and figures? The table should be self-contained. Like when I read the table, whatever mentioned in the table, I should able to understand from that table only. Okay, it should be not like that I have to refer whole methodology to understand the table. So it should be self-contained. It should be with a descriptive, clear title. Whatever the definition, whatever the cutoff value you have used, you should mention in the footnote. Whatever the abbreviation you have used, you should mention in the table. Many a time I have seen the footnote is larger than the table itself, but that is okay. That footnote should explain whatever mentioned in the table. Okay. Unit, unit also, every, like, whenever we have a value, it should be accompanying with the unit. Okay. And no need to mention unit every time. You just mention unit in a column head. No need to repeat it every cell. Okay. Then the next is duplication. No duplication. Like we have three, we have table, we have figure, and we have task description. No need to repeat your result in, you have to mention your result in any one of this only. Okay. Anytime people people write down table, and the same table is converted into graph, and same thing is written into the text. So avoid this. No need to duplicate or no need to repeat anything. If it is in table, don't type it in text. If it is, the text should highlight the pattern instead of value. The text should is to able to highlight the pattern or something which is not there in table. Something which is not there in table, you mention that in text. Choose one format. If you have mentioned the data into the figure, then no need to repeat into the table. Okay. Reference in order. So you mention the reference of table and figure into the text description. Whatever text description you write down, you, let's say our table, first table is about the socio-demographic and clinical characteristics. So when you in a text you write down socio-demographic and clinical description, just mention the table number which is linked to this textual description. Okay. So, and that table and figure number should be in a sequence. This is to mention the reference of table and figure number is important, because whenever the study is designed in a publication format, many a time the table and figures are adjusted based on the design or based on the space in the page. So it is important to mention table number so that reader and reviewer can just simply link this data or the textual description with the table. So this is how we format the table and figure. Then the next is reporting the number. When we mention numbers in the description, in the result section, or whenever we mention the numbers or result, always mention it properly. Let's say always mention the denominator. Like I find out 84 sarcopenia patient out of 234 type 2 diabetic patients. Okay. No, don't write percentage alone. That denominator should always be there whenever we write down percentage or frequency. Match the summary statistic to the distribution. If your data is normally distributed, then you have to mention mean plus standard deviation. If it is a skewed data, then you have to mention median and IQR. Okay. So based on the data, you have to mention the statistic. Pair every p-value with effect size. So don't just mention p-value, that the difference is statistically significant and p-value is this. P-value just indicate whether it is significant or not significant. It doesn't tell you the strength of association and direction of the association. For that, you need to mention effect size, odds ratio, relative risk, adjusted odds ratio, mean difference, 95% confidence interval. These are the way how we mention the effect size. Okay. The next thing is stating the p-value. Many people write down p-value like it is more than 0.05 or less than 0.0. This is not the good way to write down. You have to mention the exact p-value. Like here I have given example. Instead of writing 0.05, mention 0.032. This is the correct way. If the value p-value is less than 0.001, then only we mention p less than 0.001. Below that threshold, we mention less than 0.001. Otherwise, mention the exact value, not only table, but also in the text description. Use the consistent decimal place. That you have to use, like if you are using 1 decimal, then always use 1 decimal in entire manuscript. If you are using 2 decimal, then mention 2 decimal in entire manuscript. Okay. Don't like at one place I have written down 35.9 and another place I have written down 36. Avoid this type of uh, writing habits. The next important point are mistakes that trigger the revision request. Which are the points where you always going to get the revision request? One is interpreting inside the result. Don't interpret your result inside the result section. That my result suggests that this. Don't do. It is a part of discussion. So it should be not in the result section. Selective reporting. Many time only significant results are reported, and many author write down only significant values in the table. So then as a reviewer, we always look for which are the variables which are not reported. So always report all the variable, whether it is a significant or not significant. Not significant finding are also important. So always report all the variable, whether it is significant or not significant. Then text and table mismatch. Ensure that whatever written in the text, it matches with the table. So whatever you write down, whatever trend or whatever the value you write down in this text, it should exactly match to the table values. Any mismatch will lead to revision. New or uncited claim. Compare your finding to another study for the first time without a citation inside the result. Don't mention any other study inside your result. Result section is just for what you find out in your study. Don't interpret, don't compare, don't try to write down the meaning of the result in result section. That is for discussion section. So that we will write down in discussion section. So as I have said earlier, the discussion section is meant to write down what is the meaning of our finding, what we have find out this prevalence or whatever the significantly associated factor. Now, what is the meaning of it? That we write down on discussion. If we go general sequence, so first we will write down principal finding or important finding of our study in a very brief way. Then compare this with the other studies, that is with the literature, and then try to write down the possible explanation, and then strength and limitation, and finally the conclusion. Finally, the last section is conclusion. So if we go into the each paragraph, the first paragraph is about write down the principal finding. It is to restate your key result in one plain language. No need to mention number or any citation it. Just simply mention what is the finding. Let's say in this example, I have written in a cross-sectional study of elderly patient with type 2 diabetes. More than 1 in 3 participants met criteria for sarcopenia with prevalence rising sharply after age of 70. So this is a simple word of whatever result we have finding. What is the exact prevalence, what is the exact age, and how much it rise. That is everything there in result. But based on this, we have written down our single sentence or single paragraph finding. So our discussion will start with this important finding of our result. This is let's say it is an opening statement. Do not mention objective here. Many people start writing objective and then mention the reason. No need to mention objective. Just simply mention your important finding in a simple word. Then next is comparison with the literature. Here we try to compare our result with the other published testing or published article. So we usually try to compare. Don't try to compare each and every study, but we usually try to compare two to three or four recently published study with our result, and try to tell whether it is whether our result are agrees with that, or whether our findings are less than that or higher than that, or we have a conflicting result with that. Let's go with one example. Here example is given. This prevalence is higher than reported by Kumar et al., which is another study. but comparable with the Leon et al. Okay, so our results are higher than Kumar et al, but comparable or similar to the Leon et al. The difference from the Kumar et al may reflect our use of AWGS, that is Asian Working Group study 2019, rather than the EW, that is European Working Group SOP1 criteria, which apply lower strength cutoff value. So just comparison is not enough. After comparison, you need to justify why the difference is there. Here in this sentence, the author has clearly mentioned that the criteria which is used in my study is different than the criteria used by the another study, that is Kumar et al. The Kumar et al, it is higher, our prevalence is higher than Kumar et al because the different guidelines are used by the two researchers. So what does this sentence tell us? That it named the specific studies. So it tells us, is communicate that this comparison is not just vague, but we are very specifically comparing these two studies, and the author knows the detail about the what criteria used by both the study. So it also tell you how detailed the literature review is done by the author. Okay. It also compare whether it is higher, lower, or comparable. So it also tell us you the direction, which study has higher and which study has a lower. And why the difference? Because the diagnostic criteria is different. So when you write down the discussion, comparison is important, but it is not the end. You need to find out a reason why the difference exists or why the similarity exists. So that is actually discussion. We need to discuss why the difference is there. Okay. So there is a discussion, the possible explanation why the differences exist or why the similarity exists, that is important. Explanation, there are many ways to report explanation. Okay. Many a time it is a biological or clinical explanation. Let's say those who have elder age have a higher sarcopenia in type 2 diabetes, then we can just biologically explain. We have physiological phenomena, physiological mechanism which explain the difference, why the higher age group has a more sarcopenia. Okay. There may be a methodological explanation. Tooth study has a different, let's say in this previous example, both study use the different criteria for, so it is a methodological explanation why the difference exists. Many a time it is this study is a measurement different. The tool used for measurement is different. Many a time the sampling method is different. Many times design factors are there which affect the findings, which may be the reason for the difference in the result. So we need to mention the possible explanation. Many a time it is just a contextual. Population is different, population set is like you are doing in an urban area, somebody is doing in a rural area, the population is different. That may be the reason for the difference. So whatever the best way to explain the difference, that we need to mention. This is actual discussion. Plausible reason we need to mention when we have a something finding. So whatever finding we are getting, we need to possibly explain this finding. Then once we discuss this, once we compare, once we try to give our possible explanation, now before concluding or before finding, before taking a take home, before arriving to a take home message, we need to put what are the strengths and what are the limitations of our study. Explicitly we need to mention this. Strength, when we write down strength, whatever the genuine strength that we need to write down. It is not like that our study is very good and there are a lot of strength, but whatever the genuine, let's say if you have a very large sample size, if it is a representative sample of our setting, then mention that. If we have used well-validated standardized tool, then it become our strength. If it is in a novel population which was not studied earlier, then it is a strength. If it is a multi-centered study, then it is a strength. If we have used a robust statistical methods, analytic method, then it is a strength. Like some study are only use bivariate analysis, but some study use multivariate. So multivariate is the strength of the study. So that type of strength you need to mention, explicitly mention whatever strength you think it is there. Limitation is also very important part. Before arriving to a final conclusion, we need to put our limitation, whatever methodological limitation, that we need to mention. So limitation are something like which, like, we beyond our capacity or beyond our like what we are not able to do, that we mention in the limitation. Like, let's say our study is single center study, then it become a limitation. Multi-center study are always a strength of the study, but if we are not able to do that and we have done in only single center, then it become our limitation. If we are not able to do a large sample size, we have done in a very small sample, then it become our limitation. Then genuinely accept that limitation. Like certain variable we have collected by self-reported method only. Like, let's say patient is suffering from diabetic or not, that is based on self-reported method only. Then it become a limitation of the study. If we have diagnosed by our own way, then it become a strength. But if it is self-reported, then become a limitation of the study. Then let's say then there is another example is confounder. If we are not able to include all the confounder, if certain compounder we have not measured in our study, then become our limitations of the study. Let's say in type 2 diabetes example, we know that the nutritional intake also affect the sarcopenia or muscle mass, okay, or the strength of the muscle. If it is we are not able to take nutritional intake, then put this in the limitation, that this was not possible. And so why we write down limitation? Whoever is interpreting the finding, when we communicate take home message to reader or reviewer or editor, they need to keep the limitation in mind. They need to keep limitation. If it is a single center study, then whatever finding is there, that is limited to that center only. So when we think of the other center, we need to consider this point, this limitation, that it is a single center study. It is a self-reported data. The certain important compounder are not there. So whatever limitation, see, limitations are, let's say, it is not a negative part of the study, but we are genuinely accepting what are the things we could wish but could not able to include it in this study. So clearly mention the limitations, and after that we need to write down the implication in a few sentences. So implication means what should a clinician, researcher, or some time of policymaker do or take a message from this finding. What is important of this study for them? Whether clinician has something important which can help them to change their clinical practice, or which can lead to which can help the researcher to do something more in their future research. So that we need to include in implication. Something, let's say, grip strength. Hand grip strength is important criteria to identify sarcopenia. It is associated with sarcopenia, clearly associated with sarcopenia. Then clinician think of this hand grip strength, which can be easily done into the clinical practice. When they screen or when they assess the patient, they include the hand grip strength in their practice. Okay, so that implication we should write down in the last paragraph of discussion. We can also But whatever claim we are writing here, that should be based on the strength of our study. Do not try to make exaggerative claim that single study just change the whole policy and it should be included as a policy. It is like the policy change take a lot of research. So at the end of many study, we can suggest the policy change. But for a single study, if it is a helpful to clinician, if it is even if it is a helpful to do or guide the future research, then there is a good implications of this study. And then finally, uh, write down the conclusion. Okay, what conclusion? Usually it is 50 to 100 100 sentence paragraph, and uh, it is many a time it is write down as the last paragraph, or even many a time journal ask for the separate section. What are the do's and don't when we write down the conclusion? uh, Restart conclusion with take home message in one or most more maybe two line only. Okay, uh, don't write conclusion in a very long way, like let's say 100 150 word. Don't write down the take home message in one or two sentence, and only the single thing that you want the reader to remember. If they just forget the entire study, just if you want what you want to remember, uh, that you write down in your conclusion. But when you write down conclusion, scale your word carefully, what your study or what your study design support. Like try to instead of write and our study prove or our study demonstrate, try to use word like our study suggest that, our study indicate that. So that is skilling, you are scaling down the things. uh, if your study design genuinely allowed to claim, prove, then only mention the stronger claim. So whenever you write down, whenever we do cross-sectional study or observational study, it usually suggests or indicate. It doesn't prove. Okay, if you have done intervention study, then only you can mention strong word like prove. You may include one specific honest suggestion for the researcher or practice that we have done. But whenever we write down suggestion, be limited, we keep your scope, we limit your suggestion within the scope of the study only. If you have find out something in your study, then the recommendation or suggestion should be within that limit. Don't mention suggestion which you have not arrived. Okay. If it is there in your study, then only mention. Never introduce a new statistic or finding in the conclusion. Okay. Don't introduce something which is not there in the result and discussion section. Whatever there in already there in result, you have to mention that only. Don't recommend a policy or intervention change that a single study, especially a single observational study, cannot reasonably justify. Okay, so don't whenever you write down conclusion, be limit your conclusion to within the scope of your study only. Okay. And when you write down the conclusion, try to avoid writing the discussion again. Anytime the people just start discussing the result in the conclusion section. So in a conclusion, be very specific, be short. It should be a very compact, and it should be like a take home message with important finding and some take home message and maybe some recommendation. Okay. The next important thing is after writing a conclusion, you need to finally check these three things. One message at not only three at every place. Like we put the message or conclusion in the abstract section, in the conclusion section, and it is also there in the objective. So all these three things, our abstract, objective, and discussion should be aligned with each other. It should communicate the same message uh, at all these three places. Okay, if the message is different, if the message is don't agree, these three places don't agree with each other, then it is inconsistency in the manuscript. So it may be one of the reason for major revision in the manuscript. So whatever message you pass, it should be same in the abstract, it should be same in the conclusion, and it should be in line with our objective. Okay. The next thing, some important point when you write down manuscript. So whenever you write down, try to be very specific. Instead of vague quantifier, uh, like try to write down the exact number so that the reader can understand. Okay. So let's say one example, here it is written, it was observed that many patients had significant result in terms of sarcopenia, and it is thought that it could be due to various factors which may play important role in elderly population. Okay. Instead of this, if we write down sarcopenia was present in 84 out of 234 patients, that is 35.9%, and was significantly associated with age over 70 years, and its odds ratio is 2.1 with confidence interval 1.3 to 3.4, and likely reflecting age-related loss of muscle mass and reduced physical activity. So if you see the strong part or the second part, it is very specific. It mentions exact number instead of just mentioning higher or lower or significant or not significant. It exactly mentioned the number. It exactly mentioned the effect size or confidence interval. So you can just clearly find out the association, not only the association, but in which direction association is there, what is the strength of association, that the reader can immediately understood. So whenever you write down, you read each and every sentence of manuscript and try to make it more strong rather than weak. Try to make it more specific rather than loose sentence. Then there are certain pitfalls that you need to understand, which usually the reviewer or journals look for. That is, first is authorship criteria, whoever you select as an author. The four points the author should fulfill. First is the author, whoever is selected as an author, he or she must have substantially contributed to the design or analysis. At least either design or analysis, that person should be have a substantially contributed. Even drafting or critically revising the manuscript, that person should be part of that. Final approval of the version, that person should be part of the final approval of that manuscript. And accountability for all the part of the work, whatever either methodology, result, analysis, ethical consideration, that person should be accountable for uh, the work or the study. So if all these four criteria are met, then the person should be included in the study. Okay, just supervising, thus giving approval of the study. That all these are important part, but they should be included into the acknowledgement section rather than authorship. There is another term, if you have heard, that is salami slicing. Many people, what they do, they divide their study. They have collected the data and then divide that data into different category, and take only minimum publishable unit and publish them. So they make 2 or 3 paper from a single uh, collected data or single data set. So try to avoid that. If you have collected data for multiple objective and you are making a paper for objective separately, then it is okay. But if its data is collected for one primary objective and then you divide the data, then it flagged a concern for the reviewer. So they look for that certain data are partial data is published in this study, another data is published, some other variable are published in that study. Try to avoid that. Okay. And suppose you are using the data, same data for two paper. Let's say you have a more than one objective and you have collected data, and now you are making a 2 different paper. In that case, explicitly mention in a cover letter, or even in a methodology that this data is published here and there, or this data is used for another publication. So be transparent in that case, that you can make a two paper. Then there are certain pitfalls which raise a concern for revision. Okay, one is statistical reporting. As I have said earlier, p-value alone is doesn't convey all the magnitude. So whenever you have a p-value, you always try to mention the effect size and then 95% confidence interval. Plagiarism and similarity. Nowadays, almost all good journal assess your article for the plagiarism. Okay. Even if you want to assess, then there are available Turnitin and Authenticate softwares or websites are there. You can go there and assess. Generally, 15 to 20% are common threshold for plagiarism. But many a time, this not only this threshold, what exactly matching in a similarity check, that is important. If results are matching, then there's the article will be immediately rejected. If certain portion of introduction and discussions are matching, then the reviewer will look into detail and what exactly matching they will see. Okay, so be aware of the plagiarism and similarity and try to write down your own original things to avoid these things. Nowadays, AI is also there. So many journal assess the article for use of AI. It is not like that it is entirely not allowed. The use of AI in grammatical corrections and language improvement is allowed, but you need to clearly mention in your methodology that, or even before the after the conclusion, you can mention that at what level of AI is used. So, or you can refer the general guideline how much AI use they allow. But definitely, entirely generated text from AI is not allowed. Then the journal selection, always try to look for the scope of the journal. Whatever, select the article which is within the scope of the journal. Uh, Otherwise, it will be like they outrightly reject the article due to out of scope. Predatory journal red tag, also look, try to see whether the journal is predatory. Nowadays, many journals claim that they are PubMed index or Scopus index, but they are actually not. So try to first find out whether the journal is indexed properly or not. If someone is claiming that the no clear peer review timeline, guaranteed rapid publications, all these are red flags. If it is if there are certain journals which clearly state that we publish article within certain time limit, so that is raise a clear red flag, because you cannot judge, you cannot assess the timeline. It takes many time. If it is genuinely reviewed, it take a long time for publications. Okay, you can even go, you can read you can see the editorial board, whether they are editors are genuine or not. So that are the certain point which you use to find out the genuine journal. Then once your article is ready, once everything is ready, you have written the article in a good way, then the next thing, and you have selected journal, you then go for the pre-submission checklist. Most of the journal has this checklist on their websites. Okay, you simply go to the pre-submission checklist and see whether each and every point you have included in your study. You can also go to the various reporting guidelines and see whether your article is fulfilling that guideline, or that checklist. Your article has all the ticks are there or not. Even there are certain websites which can help you to assess this pre like, let's say I have come across one of the website, that is pre-submissionreview.com. If you submit your article, they will assess your article and tell you what are the things missing in their article. So if you computer savvy and you want to use technology, you can use that also. Then then the last is, what are the resources there are certain resources which is always helpful you to write down a methodology. One is Equator Network. That, as I have already said, this Equator Network has a lot of guidelines. So you just go to the site, you mention your what type of study you are doing, and they will tell you the guideline. So use that guideline to see whether you fulfilled all the guideline. You have prepared the study according to this guideline or not. Then another is ICMJE recommendations. Okay, so this is like a network which has a lot of recommendation or different. Most of the many time journal follow this ICMJE recommendation for their policies. So that will be very helpful for you to understand the what are the different guidelines. Then you just select the journal and go to there are always, every journal has their own author guideline. So you just read that guideline. That will help you to structure whether the abstract need to be 200 word, 250 word, 300 word. That you can see there are certain, many times they have limitation of table, that only 4 tables are allowed, only 4 figures are allowed. So you can structure your manuscript in that way. Reference style, you can just go and see. You can, so like you have a less chances of rejection or comments if you have prepared the article according to the journal guideline. Then response to the reviewer letter. Once you submit the article, you will get a reviewer comment. Okay. If you get the reviewer comment, then you need to reply point by point. Each and every comment you need to reply. So that is also important. Okay, so based on that, the author, the reviewer can easily understand what was asked by them and what is the reply of the author. So that is also important. So these things you need to keep in mind when we are writing the manuscript. So before we take few questions, what I mean to communicate here, that a manuscript is not a record of what you did. It is an argument why it is matter, why your study is important, written so a stranger can verify every step. So those who are not part of the study can verify each and every steps, and even if they want to do study, they can do that study on their own. So this is all about my session. If you now, hello, now whatever what I have to communicate, I have told you. Now, if you have any question, you can ask at this point of time. Hello.
If anybody has any query, kindly write it in the chat box. You can turn on your camera and ask the query.
I think nobody has a question.
Okay, as no one has anything to ask, we come to the end of this enriching webinar. On behalf of the Indian Pharmacologists United Network, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Prakash B. Patel, sir, for sharing his invaluable knowledge and expertise on how to write a manuscript and thesis. Sir, thank you for delivering such a comprehensive, practical, and inspiring session. Your guidance on scientific writing, structuring a thesis, preparing a manuscript, and navigating the publication process has provided our participants with valuable insight that will undoubtedly benefit them throughout their academic and research careers. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Anupama Desai ma'am, Head of the Department and Organizing Secretary of IPUN, for her constant encouragement and unwavering support in organizing academic activities that empower students and researchers. A special note of appreciation goes to Dr. Arvind Singh Pawar, sir, founder and coordinator of IPUN, whose dedication and vision continue to inspire the pharmacology fraternity by creating platforms that promote learning and professional growth. I would also like to thank each and every participant for your enthusiastic presence and your interest and engagement. It made today's session truly meaningful. We hope the knowledge gained today will help you write a better thesis and prepare quality manuscripts. Once again, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much.